The courtroom wasn't cold because of the AC. It was cold because of the atmosphere. Not a single voice dared rise above a whisper. Reporters sat stiff, notepads trembling in their hands. Families of victims leaned into each other for strength, while photographers froze in position, waiting to capture the one shot that would define the entire day. Then, the heavy doors creaked open, and in walked Sean Diddy Combs, moving slow, wrapped in a faded tan prison uniform. His wrists shackled in steel, his eyes clouded with caution. But it wasn't the cuffs that stole everyone's attention. It was his expression. No arrogance, no ego, no disguise. Just exhaustion carved deep into his face, and fear he couldn't mask. His gaze swept the room, landing on former fans who once cheered him, old allies who now felt betrayed, and journalists sharpening their pens to turn every blink into a headline. He didn't wave. He didn't nod. He didn't speak. He just walked forward, each footstep heavy, dragging him closer to the defense table where his lawyers sat pale and frozen. This wasn't fame anymore. This was reckoning. Before we go deeper into this unbelievable story, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss when we drop the next twist in this wild saga. Now, back to it. The judge hadn't even stepped inside yet, but the air was already trembling. Everyone could feel it. Something about today was different. No whispers of backroom deals. No nervous scrolling on phones. The courtroom had turned into a pressure chamber, seconds away from blowing. Then the bailiff's voice boomed. All rise. Silence fell like a hammer, and out came the judge. Tall, stone-faced. No smile, no warmth, no patience for celebrity excuses. They sat behind the bench, eyes locking instantly on Diddy, locked like a hawk to prey. For a heartbeat, you could hear nothing but breath. And Diddy? His eyes dropped. He didn't even dare look back. He already knew mercy would be rare in this room. Then came the words that shattered it all. We are here today for final sentencing in the matter of the state versus Sean Combs. The room flipped instantly. Reporters surged forward, cameras raised. The crowd leaned in. And Diddy? He sank back in his chair, slow, like a man walking a plank with no rescue waiting below. What no one realized, not even his attorneys, was that before this day ended, Diddy himself would speak. And whatever he said would split the world in two. Half would insist he deserved every ounce of punishment. The other half would wonder if they had just witnessed the fall of a man swallowed by the very empire he built. His lead attorney rose, shoulders tight, throat clearing against the weight of the moment. He had handled famous cases before, but nothing like this. This one burned hotter, felt toxic. Adjusting his tie, he locked eyes with the judge. Your Honor, he began, his voice deliberate, steady. We do not come before you to erase the gravity of the charges. We come to show you the man behind the headlines. And with that, the last plea began. He motioned toward the pile of documents stacked on the desk. Letters from former employees, artists who owed him breaks, charities he had secretly funded. He read one aloud, a handwritten note from a single mother whose daughter's entire college tuition had been paid by Diddy without the world ever knowing. The courtroom stayed hushed, but eyes shifted. Curious, cautious, skeptical. The attorney pressed on. Mr. Combs has already lost nearly everything, his businesses, his reputation, his very name. But more than that, his family has endured unimaginable suffering. That's when the screens flickered on. A slideshow filled the courtroom. Images of Diddy with his kids. Footage of him at food drives, handing out turkeys on Thanksgiving. Community events where he smiled beside families he'd quietly supported. Soft piano played under the visuals. It felt surreal, like a documentary screening in the middle of sentencing. And for a moment, the weight of the courtroom shifted. A handful of jurors from the original trial sat quietly in the observation seats. Their faces gave nothing away, eyes fixed on the screen without so much as a flinch. Then, the defense attorney said something no one in the room expected. Your Honor, if we are speaking of justice, then we must also speak of redemption. We must consider rehabilitation over destruction. This is not a monster before you. This is a man. His words hung heavy in the air. He turned to Diddy, but Diddy didn't move, didn't blink. It was like he was carved in stone. Then came the list. One by one, the punishments already endured. $48 million in contracts erased overnight. Every brand deal severed in an instant. His mansion rated live on television. His children trailed for weeks by paparazzi. Daily death threats delivered like clockwork. The attorney's voice tightened as he spoke louder. You may argue he deserves more, he said. But ask yourself, when does punishment stop being justice, and when does it start becoming vengeance? For a moment, the room shifted. A murmur spread in the back. Someone sniffled. A few heads nodded faintly. But the judge? Silent. Still. The lawyer drew a long breath, then stepped back. That is all. And then, like a scene from a movie, the entire focus shifted. Not to the attorney, not even to the judge, but to the man at the center of it all. The judge leaned slightly forward. Mr. Combs, do you wish to address the court on your own behalf? The words froze the air. You could feel every heartbeat stumble. Diddy glanced at his lawyer, who gave a single nod. Then slowly, shakily, he rose to his feet. What followed was something no one thought they would ever hear. Diddy stood like a man caught in fog. His famous image stripped bare. No sunglasses, no designer suit, no polished persona. Just Sean Combs. Raw. Exposed. Cornered. He stepped toward the microphone, stopping short. 10 seconds. Nothing. Just silence so thick it made the gallery shift in their seats. His hands trembled, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. And then, finally, he spoke. Your Honor, I've lived this moment in my head every night since the cuff went on. I've rehearsed it 1,000 times. What to say, how to say it. But every version sounded false. So today, I won't act. I won't perform. I'll only speak from the one place I still have left, the truth. The room didn't stay. Not a cough, not a whisper. He lifted his eyes, locking on the judge for the first time. I've lived a big life, a loud life. I've thrown parties that shut cities down. I've made deals in boardrooms and in back rooms. I've held power I sometimes couldn't control. But what I never imagined was this moment. His voice cracked as he gestured toward his chest. When I look in the mirror now, I don't see the man on magazine covers. I see a father terrified his children will never forgive him. I see a son ashamed his mother has to watch a child become a headline. His eyes shimmered, blinking fast, but he didn't wipe them away. I know what they call me. A manipulator, a narcissist, a man who used fame as a shield. Maybe I did. Maybe I let power blind me. But this courtroom stripped that all away. He toned, voice softer, to the crowd behind him. To those I hurt, I cannot undo the past. But I hear you now. I see you. If I could live those moments again, I would choose differently. But I can't. All I can do is ask for mercy. Not for wealth, not for fame, but because I am human. Because I want a chance to do better. For a second, it seemed like he was finished. He shifted, ready to sit. But then, unexpectedly, he spoke again. And to this court, I need you to know. If you grant me mercy, I will not waste it. I won't vanish into silence. I will spend every day proving I can rebuild something honorable from the wreckage I created. I'm not asking to be forgotten. His voice dropped, trembling but steady. I'm only asking for the chance to change. I'm asking you to believe I can still change. With those final words, he stepped back. The cuffs on his wrists rattled softly as he lowered himself into the chair. He didn't lift his eyes again. The moment had slipped past. His truth was spoken. And now, only one person in the entire room had the power to decide if any of it mattered. All focus shifted to the judge, still as stone, face unreadable, body unmoving. In that stillness, the atmosphere froze once more. The silence after Diddy's plea wasn't ordinary silence. It was suffocating. It didn't just linger, it pressed down on everyone's lungs. Even the court's camera operators looked uncertain whether to keep filming or to simply stop breathing. For an instant, it seemed the balance had shifted. A woman in the second row clutched her purse tighter, her eyes red, fixed on Diddy's bowed head. Beside her, a man, expressionless throughout the trial, massaged his temples. No one knew if it was frustration, disbelief, or something softer. A low current of whispers began to ripple through the gallery. Reporters hammered away at keyboards. Others exchanged quick, stunned glances. A member of the defense team tried to quiet them with a gesture, but the wave of reaction kept spreading, unstoppable. In the very back row, a woman who had once testified in secret was now visible, her face caught between admiration for the man she once idolized and the bitter weight of betrayal. She couldn't decide which was stronger. Even the jury box, now filled with alternates and observers from the original trial, wasn't immune. One of them leaned toward another and muttered, "That didn't sound like the same guy we listened to 3 weeks ago." The room was fractured, one half leaning, if not toward forgiveness, at least toward acknowledgement of humanity. The other half sat hardened, unmoved. For them, this wasn't the beginning of redemption. It was the final chapter of reckoning. And then, the second where time itself stalled. The judge leaned forward, placing both hands flat on the bench. Their eyes fixed on Diddy, steady, unblinking. They weren't measuring his words anymore. They were weighing the man. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally spoke. "Mr. Combs," their voice rang firm but deliberate, "you stand before this court asking for mercy." Diddy didn't flinch, didn't blink. "You ask us to see the man behind the fame, the figure behind the brand." The judge's words cut through the silence. "But you asked us after decades of silence, after years of manipulation, after hiding behind walls built with money, with attorneys, with carefully rehearsed apologies." The gallery stiffened. Each sentence struck like a hammer. "You ask for mercy now because those walls have finally collapsed around you." The room held its breath. Then, almost unexpectedly, the judge's tone shifted. "And yet, today, you spoke with something else. Something this court rarely sees from you. Not arrogance, not performance, but fear, maybe even shame. And while this court does not reward emotion, it does take note of authenticity." A flicker passed over Diddy's face. Hope, regret, or both. The judge leaned back slowly, scanning the room. "But I must also look outward," the judge continued, voice steady, "at the pain seated in this very gallery, at the families who never heard an apology, at the victims who never saw accountability. Should their trauma be diminished because of a slideshow, a few letters, and a well-timed plea?" Every head turned as the judge gestured to the audience. Justice is not defined by who you are when the spotlight burns brightest. Justice is defined by who you are when no one is watching. Not with a bang. Not yet. But like a shadow closing in, Diddy could feel his fate tightening around him with every second. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a final breath before the plunge. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed far longer than it should have, bouncing off the walls and through every heart in the room. Diddy flinched at the sound, his body jerking as it struck. For a moment, he froze, trying to process the weight of what had just been handed to him. The judge leaned back, eyes unblinking, voice sharp and cold, every syllable etched into Diddy's mind, undeniable and final. Gasps rolled through the gallery as cameras clicked, capturing the moment his legendary confidence drained away. He turned to his lawyer, lips parting, but there was no response, only silence. Then the bailiff's steady footsteps cut through the air, each one dragging the inevitable closer. When the officer's hand touched his shoulder, Diddy's breath hitched. He rose slowly, wrists offered without protest, the metallic click of the cuffs louder than the gavel itself. One last glance over his shoulder, a futile search for something, anything, to hold on to. The judge's words still lingered as he was led through the side door. No music, no applause, no fade-out. Just the creak of the door sealing shut behind him, leaving only the echo of the verdict, the chill of the sentence, and the haunting certainty that he would never forget this day, not rushed, not careless, deliberate. Every movement carried weight. Every gesture demanded silence. Diddy sat frozen, his hands locked so tightly his knuckles gleamed, jaw clenched like stone. This wasn't a trial anymore. It was Judgment Day. The judge's voice lowered, not in anger, but in finality. "Mr. Combs, you came before this court pleading for mercy. But what I've heard is not transformation, it's desperation. What I've seen is not remorse, it's resistance. Resistance to truth, to humility, to accountability." All eyes locked forward. Cameras hummed. Courtroom artists dragged graphite furiously across paper, trying to immortalize the weight of the moment. Diddy's attorneys didn't move, didn't even glance his way. They already knew. The judge pressed on. I read every letter, weighed every testimony, examined every piece of evidence. Yes, your music echoes across the world, but within these walls, your rhythm ends in silence. For too long, power has been mistaken for protection. But hey, this is where power stops. This is where reality begins. The judge turned a page, each flip echoing like a gavel. Mr. Combs, you use your influence not to uplift, but to intimidate, not to shield, but to silence. You crafted an empire control, never realizing that control comes with consequence. The gallery rippled with tension. Whispers darted row to row, phones buzzing in pockets as headlines erupted mid-sentence. The nation was already reacting, yet the verdict hadn't even been spoken. The judge's voice grew heavier, words pressing down like stone. You had every chance to own your truth. Instead, you played chess while others bled. This court does not rejoice in your downfall, Mr. Combs, but it will not ignore the cost of your choices. The court lamented that it had taken so long to arrive at this moment. Then it came, the moment the world had been waiting for, the one destined to replay in endless clips, tweets, documentaries, and podcasts for years to come. In accordance with the charges brought before this court, and in recognition of the evidence, the impact on victims, and the failure to demonstrate genuine accountability, the judge paused, letting the words hang. This court hereby sentences you, Sean Combs, to a term of 16 years in federal custody with no eligibility for parole for the first 12. A gasp tore through the gallery like thunder. Some covered their mouths. Others muttered in disbelief. One woman fainted. The sharp clatter of a pen striking the floor sounded like a gunshot. And Diddy, he didn't move. Not a blink, not a twitch. It was as if he had rehearsed his verdict in his head for months, only to find that now, as it became real, it was heavier than he had imagined. The judge fixed him with an unflinching gaze. You will serve your time, Mr. Combs, and you will not serve it in silence, because every day you will be reminded that no man is above the law, not even one who believed he wrote his own. The gavel slammed once. The sound reverberated like a final drumbeat, shaking the walls and sealing the verdict. The bailiff moved in. The jangle of keys cut through the stunned quiet like a death knell. Diddy sat pale and motionless as two guards flanked him. No resistance, no tears, no swagger. Just a man stripped of everything. The metallic click of the cuffs around his wrists carried more weight than any headline. Reporters scrambled, cameras flashing, pens scratching furiously, but the air stayed hushed, every whisper strained with disbelief. Then, from the gallery, a voice broke the silence. Coward! Head snapped around. A man in his 40s stood trembling with rage until an officer stepped toward him. But the damage was done. The word hung in the chamber like smoke. Diddy flinched. Another voice followed, sharper, cutting through the hush. Finally! And with that, the spell shattered. The gallery erupted into murmurs, some shaking their heads, others quietly weeping. As Diddy was escorted past the press box, the moment that would define the day struck. A reporter shouted, "Do you regret it, Sean?" He stopped, just for a heartbeat. His eyes swept the crowd, then locked once more with the judge. And then he spoke, barely audible, but caught by the nearest microphone. I was wrong. That sentence, just 3 words, would dominate headlines for the next 48 hours. I was wrong. But was it genuine remorse? Was it scripted damage control? Or was it simply too late? CNN, TMZ, BBC, even international outlets blasted the clip nonstop. Social media split instantly. Some called it too little, too late. Others defended it, saying at least he owned it. And then a third group warned, don't fall for it. He's just playing the game. But while the cameras captured that one line, a far bigger story was unfolding quietly in the courthouse halls. Multiple sources revealed that Diddy's legal team had been scrambling behind the scenes, negotiating for a reduced sentence until the very last moment. They offered everything, rehab, millions in donations, even televised apologies. But the judge refused. No deals, no loopholes, no sale. That was the moment it all clicked. The fire in the judge's tone, Diddy's defeated look before the sentence even dropped. For the first time in his career, Sean Diddy Combs had stepped into a room he couldn't manipulate, a courtroom. And in that room, justice didn't flinch. Outside, chaos reigned. News vans jammed the street, reporters screaming into cameras, protesters and supporters separated by barricades. One side chanting for justice, the other crying set up. Then the doors opened. Flanked by 2 federal marshals, Diddy emerged shackled, head down, sunglasses gone. No entourage, no private car, just a black transport van waiting to swallow him whole. Flashbulbs erupted. The crowd roared, some in fury, others begging for selfies like it was still a red carpet. But Diddy never turned, never waved. He walked forward like a man already counting the steps to his cage. And then came the moment that pierced through everything. A boy, maybe 12, perched on his father's shoulders, held a sign that read, "Legends don't hurt people." Even through the tinted glass, it was clear those words hit him. Diddy turned his head, just slightly, just enough. Then the door slammed. Back inside, the judge slipped off their robe in silence. A clerk asked about a media statement. The judge waved it off. "The sentence is a statement," they said flatly, before disappearing into chambers. The gavel dropped, and the chamber's door slammed shut. What followed was chaos in pure internet fashion. Memes exploded everywhere. Diddy's mugshot slapped onto Monopoly boards, side by side with essays from artists confessing, "He saved my life and destroyed it at the same time." Talk shows picked apart the trial like vultures, from race and celebrity privilege to legal technicalities. Fans mourned, critics cheered, but everyone agreed, history just shifted. This wasn't just a celebrity downfall. It was a legacy unraveling before our eyes. The world was watching the brutal clash between talent and toxicity, genius and guilt. Music stations quietly dropped his tracks. Brands scrubbed his name from past campaigns. Award shows fell silent. Diddy wasn't just sentenced, he was erased. The empire he once ruled had vanished like smoke. But under the noise, something deeper was stirring. A new generation was watching this unfold live. Kids who grew up thinking Diddy was untouchable were seeing the truth. Money, fame, and power only delay reality. The justice system, flawed, corrupt, and selective, still thundered when it had to. And this trial wasn't just about one man. It was about the silence, the survivors, and the system that protects some while devouring others. As the prison van pulled away, its tail lights glowing against the sunset, the world stayed divided. Some felt closure. Others mourned a shattered icon. But one thing became undeniable. This story isn't over. Because it was never just about what happened inside that courtroom. The real question now, the one hanging heavy over Hollywood, over music, over justice, is simple. What happens next?